All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this fall's installment of the CEO Speaker Series here at the Debbie and Jerry Ivy College of Business. My name is David Spalding. I'm the Raisbeck and Dow Dean of the Ivy College of Business, and it's a pleasure to welcome so many of you from the College of Business, College of Engineering, College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, as well as community members. So glad to have everyone here for this really interesting and great talk today. I want to thank our co-sponsors for this event, the Collegiate Women in Business, who co-sponsored this, and Beth's been engaged with that group almost from the beginning in various opportunities, and so glad to have them a part of this as well. So today's speaker is Beth Ford, who's been very generous with her time over the last few years, coming here to campus to speak in front of a variety of student groups, and we're glad to have her back here again. She is the president and CEO of Land O'Lakes, a Fortune 200 food production and agribusiness company that's also actually a 100-year-old farmer-owned cooperative. Her 33-year career spans 6 different industries at 7 different companies. Since joining Land O'Lakes in 2011, she's held a variety of roles, leading the farmer-to-fork business offerings. Today, she's a passionate advocate on behalf of farmers in rural America with the goal of connecting people, particularly in urban areas, to the farmers and rural communities who grow their food. Native of Sioux City, Iowa, Beth holds a bachelor's degree from right here at Iowa State from the Ivy College of Business, as well as a master's degree in business from Columbia University. She also sits on the board of directors for several industry, nonprofit, and university boards, in addition to serving on my Dean's Advisory Council. Beth's recently been recognized by Fortune magazine as one of the world's 50 greatest leaders and most powerful women, was named to Fast Company's most productive people and best leaders lists, and was named one of Time magazine's first, among other honors. Her range of experience and leadership make her the perfect speaker for you today. It's been exciting to partner with her and watch her career grow just in the short time that I've known her, and we're so proud to have her as an alumnus of the Ivy College of Business. Please welcome a very loyal Cyclone, Beth Ford.
Thanks, David. Thank you, David, and I am so pleased to be here. Isn't David terrific? We're so lucky to have him as the dean. I was here during that transition. We were lucky to land him. But now you're almost like a native Iowan, aren't you, David? Okay, well, a couple more winters. We're going to have him nailed here. I'm so excited to be here today, and I'm going to talk about a topic that I think is centrally important, and one of the things that I've been discussing much more actively recently, and it is bridging this rural-urban divide, and it comes at us in a number of different ways, I think. The politicization of different things, including food production and agribusiness, climate change, many issues that I think are centrally important. So one of the things that attracted me to Land O'Lakes, and I was in New York when I received a call when I go in to Land O'Lakes to talk to the CEO at the time, and I thought, well, what's interesting, of course, I knew Land O'Lakes, I'm from Iowa, and of course everybody knew the business, everybody knows the butter business, and we're always like, we love the butter, it's awesome. But we're much bigger than that. And when I spoke to the CEO, he talked about the grand challenge of feeding a growing world population set to go to 10 billion people by 2050. And at the same time, while we're focused on that, and that is still the challenge, and it's why the model at Land O'Lakes I think is so interesting. A co-op, farmer-owned, have to feed the growing world population, a significant challenge. At the same time, since I took over as CEO last year, I've been focusing more near-in on rural communities, on the strength of rural communities. And why is that? My observation isn't just that that's where our members live. It is the fact that there is a shared destiny between the urban and rural communities. And people seem to have forgotten that. I think the food shows up on the store shelf and everybody's like, oh, the food is here. As though this is a distant area, rural America, distant area. And so I'm concerned about it. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, why I find that so interesting. I'm going to talk about our platform, and I'm going to give you some of my tips for a 33-year career, the way I think of career management and the things that you can look for yourself, that I would encourage you to look for. Now, Before I do that, I get the great pleasure, it's still a pleasure, Rick. Yeah, I get the great pleasure of introducing the chair of our board of directors at Land O'Lakes, who is also an Iowa State grad, a Cyclone, interestingly enough. We have a number of Cyclones that sit on the board or that we hire and that are working for us. I thought it would be interesting to have Rick Brand, our chair, come up and talk with you about the cooperative model. Oftentimes when I'm out, people say, a co-op, what's that about? As though it's a sleepy business. It is not. We are a $15 billion Fortune 200 company. It's about reinvesting in rural America. I'm going to have Rick talk about the power of the co-op model. Let me give you a little background on Rick. Rick started farming 80 acres in 1982 while he was still in college right here at Iowa State. Today his operation consists of 2,300 acres of corn and soybeans. He also owns and operates a tax and accounting business. It's really a lot of fun. You are a fun guy. Specializing in farm businesses. Rick is a former director on the Prairie Valley School Board and has served on the Farmers Cooperative Board for 12 years, including serving as president for 4 years and as a member of the executive board for 8 years. He and his wife, Maureen, who's also here, have 3 children, one of whom is also here. Rick is going to share with you his view of the co-op model, why he thinks it's so special, and why I think it's still relevant, although everybody always is talking to me about the death of the co-op model. So let me introduce Rick Brand, and then I'm going to come back up and talk about this rural-urban divide.
God, you're good.
I tried.
Is this live? Yes. All right. To start off with, I am from a small town in northwestern Iowa called Summers. If anybody's been there, they've been lost. Mm-hmm. Beth commented about my kids. We have 2 daughters and a son. Son is here with us today. First girl kind of got lost, and she went to this school called UNI. Our next 2 kids, our one daughter graduated from Iowa State last year, majoring in agronomy, and our son is a junior this year in ag business. Okay, now they found their way. I'm going to start off and I'm going to say, it's hard to believe it's been 35 years ago that I went to Iowa State University. On my different trips between Beardshire Hall and Curtis on a cold, blistery day, the last thing in my mind was that someday I would be the chairman of the board of Land O'Lakes. That wasn't even on my radar. Now I'm privileged because I get to work with Beth, her executive leadership team, and the entire board of directors with Land O'Lakes, something I would have never thought in my wildest dreams. So what I am telling you is to keep your sights up. I was coerced into running for a board approximately 25 years ago, and they told me it would only last for a year, and
you were
guess what?
voluntold.
Pardon?
Voluntold.
Voluntold, yes. So, and one of the nicest things, and you just can't believe this, but we spend a lot of time and energy on the board, but it comes back to you 100-fold. It's just something that is so rewarding. So now, I'm not a speaker like Beth, so some of this is going to be read, but this is my vision, my thoughts of Land O'Lakes. The Business Roundtable recently announced a new purpose for corporations, formally dedicated to the shareholder first mentality. The new purpose refers to creating value for the customers, investing in the employees, fostering diversity and inclusion, dealing fairly and ethically with your suppliers, protecting the environment, that's a big thing today, and supporting the communities in which we work. As a cooperative, this has been Land O'Lakes' thoughts and objectives all along. True to our farmer mentality, Land O'Lakes is not just worrying about this problem, but we recognize that because of our well-known brand, we have an entry point to talk to suburban and urban consumers. And because of our cooperative and our business relationships, we inherently understand the struggles of rural America, the farmers today in particular. It's in our co-op's nature to bring people together to solve these problems. And I want to be sure we are using our platform to do that. Already, Land O'Lakes is actively working to lift up the communities that we are a part of. Some examples of this would be we are literally helping build the future of education at our 3 key universities through investments in the academic facilities. You won't like to hear this, but Purdue is one of them. At Purdue, we have built the Land O'Lakes Center for Experimental Learning and the Perina Pavilion. The University of Minnesota, it's right in our backyard. We have built the Land O'Lakes Center for Excellence. And Iowa State University, today it's not completed yet, but we are helping to build the Student Innovation Center. It will be completed in the near future. We offer scholarships at key university partners, along with our own Winfield United Careers in Ag Scholarship Program. We offer the Global Food Challenge. Recently, we've started doing health insurance plans for some of our members. Our foundation is alleviating hunger through product donations and giving, including 4.6 million pounds of dairy products to rural food banks since 2010. This is one of the biggest things that I had no idea that Land O'Lakes was involved in, and I've been very fortunate because I've got to witness that. We operate what is called a first run mac and cheese program. So we'll go into different food banks with a semi-load of not leftover mac and cheese. This is first run, and it goes to families that need the food, and it's pre-made. You don't even have to worry about adding milk, and it's good. So going forward, we are going to use our brand as an entry point to shift the conversation from one about what divides us to about what is one that unites us all together in America. Thank you. Here she is.
All right, thanks, Rick. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to start this conversation about the rural-urban divide, but I'm going to try to weave in conversations about what's going on in business that I think is really important as you think about what's next in your careers, because you will step out of the university and you'll start your career journey. And you should understand the level of disruption that is now occurring in the business environment. Actually, it's occurring everywhere. I oftentimes have to remind my team, this is not unique to agriculture, it's not unique to business, and it's not unique to any food production business. The level of disruption caused by technology, caused by a growing world population, it's a central issue. Now, agriculture, as I mentioned, one of the things that interested me about this job, and I went in as Chief Supply Chain Officer for Land O'Lakes, one of the things that interested me was this grand challenge of feeding a growing world population set to go to 10 billion. Most of them outside the United States, by the way. Right? So one of the other things that I admire so much about the business is that our farmer members, and we are farmer owned, or local retail owned and from rural communities, they thought of the world as their neighborhood. And so they started an NGO, a nonprofit. It's now called Venture 37. We do work around the world right now, so we've done work in Afghanistan, we're in Kenya, Malawi, in other countries where, and we have this in our Global Food Challenge, we have some of you come in and work with us and then do some work in Africa. So what we're trying to do is teach different practices in agriculture so we can drive food security. What we also help is women, especially. A third of women around the world are involved in agriculture. Most of the time when I talk about agriculture, people think of it as a guy in a pickup truck here, right, with the red barn. And actually a third of agriculture is, you have women in agriculture. And what happens is it strengthens the community, it strengthens the family, there's reinvestment and support for children, right? This really actually is a life or death issue in many countries. So this feeding a growing world population set to grow to 10 billion people is a central challenge. The reality is what's interesting, and I'm so grateful that you're here today so that we can have a conversation. Many jobs that we have that are created in agriculture every year go unfilled. And I think it's because people think it's not sexy enough or something, not high tech enough, but I'm going to disabuse you of that notion. We're invested in technology, in data silos, in any number, predictive models. We're partnered with Microsoft, with Amazon, with other businesses, because predictive modeling and technology is the wave of the future in modern agriculture. It will help us be more efficient. It will help us drive yield and be more sustainable. I'm going to talk a little bit about this. So we have to feed a growing world population set to grow to 10 billion people by 2050. Now, the fact of the matter is, and one of the reasons I've pivoted in a lot of my conversations about vibrancy of rural communities. Now, I'd be interested to hear in the hall, how many of you are from a farm family? A significant number. How many of you are from a rural community? A significant number. So these are not going to be new news things to you, okay? This chart shows you a disrupted environment. A disrupted environment. This is actually going to consolidation. It's a bit of an eye chart, but consolidation occurring right now in the sector. It's coming up and down as you see giants merging together and consolidating, right? Bayer, Monsanto, Syngenta, ChemChina. You've got new Corteva. All of those are consolidating. That's because technology is so important. A lot of products are coming off patent, so they need to get positioned in the marketplace. So up here at the scale basics level, in order to invest in research to replace those things that are coming off patent, you get consolidation. At the same time, it's pulling down the sector. Why? Many of you who are from a farm family, you know that this has been a considerable period of time where we've had very low commodity prices. Haven't we? Overproduction of corn and soybeans. Now we've got tariffs. We've got a strong dollar. So we have a demand destruction problem. So there's not enough demand, and we've got an oversupply. So what's happening is not just at the basic level, but up and down the sector, you're seeing consolidation occur at the farm level. Acres are shifting, animals are moving. The most pronounced way that I see this is in the dairy sector. So, everybody knows our dairy products, of course. I would say butter. We also have Cozy Check pudding. We have cheese, Vermont Creamery. All those things are still there. And by the way, butter is back and fat is healthy. And we're just all, yay. It's everything for us, isn't it? I love it. The reality, however, is that Land O'Lakes is actually working with growers. We're working with hog producers. We're working with all sorts of farmers. And we're a branded goods company. We also own Purina, animal nutrition, on the livestock side, right? We have exotic animals. We have an exotic animal business. So everybody knows our dairy business. And that's where I would say we're seeing the most pressure right now, although there is pressure in the sector, period, in agriculture. And from a business perspective, it's really an important learning. There used to be, probably in 2001 or 2002, I think it is, there used to be like 90,000 dairy producers. And now there's 50,000. Think of that level of consolidation. It's rolling up. So what happens? 3 dairy producers a day are going out of business in the state of Wisconsin, a heritage dairy state. That's how quickly consolidation is occurring. That's what happened in the hog market here in Iowa, actually, large hog producers. So, there's this narrative that comes out that big ag is bad and it's corporate farming. But this is a supply-demand challenge that's driving consolidation, and it's accelerating. One of the other pressures that's coming in that is really important for you to understand as a business person is what's happening in grocery retail. So what did you see? You saw consolidation when Amazon bought Whole Foods. Do you remember that? So what happens then is Amazon is famous for pressuring price. And if you're a Kroger or a Hy-Vee or anything, you have to drive traffic in your store. They've been disrupted by e-business because now you can do click and carry, you can order online, you can order your groceries to be delivered, right? And so they still, however, have a real estate footprint. So they need to drive traffic in the store. So how do they do that? They do that with fresh goods. Moms and dads who need to feed their child fresh goods. And what is that? Fresh milk, fresh dairy products. So that what's happening now is that they're putting on their own animals, they're putting on their own processing capability, and we're going to continue to see disruption, because what they do is what businesses do. They try to capture profit pools, they go up and down the value chain. That's why they put on their own processing, they put on their own animals, and they try to say, I want to control this because I need to capture that profit pool. But it's pushing all the way down into agriculture and into the sector, but up and down. It's really something important for you to understand from a business perspective. So oftentimes when I'm giving a speech or when I'm doing an interview, people want to talk to me about tariffs and the politics of this. And of course it's important. But fundamentally, there are challenges in this sector with overproduction, and then with other variables like retail consolidation or retail disruption, technology disruption, different players coming into the marketplace, Aldi from Europe, who come in, and they're all about low prices. And then there's a changing consumer, you. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. First, I want to talk about some lessons that we should learn. Who's winning in retail right now? Who do you think is winning in retail? I can tell you who isn't winning. Sears, right? JCPenney's, or that was fancy in my family, so we called that Jacques Penney, right? So it's big stuff. If you could afford to go to the JCPenney's and get anything. But when I was growing up, when Rick was growing up, I'm guessing when Maureen was growing up, we would shop at the Sears. They had position in communities, right? They had a footprint. But it doesn't differentiate. What do you have to have now? You have to have differentiation, because guess what? I can buy white t-shirts for my kids anywhere. I can go online for that. I don't need to go to the store. I don't need to go to a Sears. I can go and buy that anywhere because I can get something online. I don't want to be inconvenienced. So now Sears is bankrupt, basically. They're being sold off for real estate. JCPenney's is under $1 a share. Who's winning in retail, do you think, right now? Best Buy is. Why is Best Buy winning, do you think? It's not just because they're in technology and everybody's into technology. They shifted the model. They decided services were important. Services are important. So what they're doing is you can pay them a couple $100. They'll come in, even if you didn't buy the toaster from them, they can come in and diagnose it. Right, so they've differentiated their offer. They don't make any money on selling you the TV. They make money on the market basket. They make money on the cords and all the other services they offer. That's how they stay connected to you. So I want to bring this up because I want you to understand this disruption, whether it's at retail or any other way, you're going to see this shift to services. John Deere is saying they're not going to be in the tractor business anymore. Of course they're going to, but they're going to sell a subscription. And what they'll do is they'll come up and they'll make sure you have the tractor when you need it, and they'll service it, right? And that's the way we're thinking of everything right now, right? You've got an Uber. You go into one of the cities, you can get one of the scooters. Everything is shifting to a services model. The consumer is in charge. And that's why I say these things that I'm talking about, when people talk with you about business change or tariffs or agriculture, yes, all those are true. But there's been other disruption that you should understand that are going to be longer lived, that are going to be disruptions that will stay with us. There is a real move to subscription models and light assets. You don't have to buy something. Instead, you buy the subscription and somebody else takes care of it. Even farmers, you don't have to own your own tractor. You can get a subscription, so it's a huge issue. You know who's in charge right now? The consumer is in charge. The consumer is in charge. And how do I know that? What happens is a narrative happens online, and we get all this information from that font of all knowledge, Google, right, and the internet. And we get confirmation bias. We get confirmation bias because we follow the same people who believe in the same things we do. It's very, very challenging, and we see it play out in food production and agribusiness, where people who aren't familiar with ag practices or sustainable farming have their own point of view about what is good and what is bad. So we've lost, or almost lost, the use of safe, proven technology, GMOs, for instance. Now we're demonizing companies like Monsanto, now Bayer, as though this is bad. But the science doesn't support that. The science doesn't support that. In fact, most farmers you would talk to would say, thank goodness, because this will allow me to drive profitability and good yield. And this has been in the food system for 20 plus years. This is safe, proven technology. So the concern that you have is that you have customers or consumers who are in charge. Now, sometimes that's good. You know how consumers are making their decisions today? They make them based on their values assessment, and it's not just on price and placement like it used to be in marketing. It's based on who you think I am, who you think Rick is, who you think my company is. I won't buy from you if I don't think that you're a good person aligned with my values. Isn't that true? That is true. And on the one hand, I can say, well, I'm not going to argue that. Of course, you don't want to do business with somebody that you don't want to do business with, right? You're not going to buy their stuff. But the concern that I have is whether it's fact-based, whether it's based on a narrative that starts to be generated in social media that actually is not based in science, not based in practice. It's kind of rumor mongering, right? It's something that you saw when you were in grade school or middle school or whatever, where you realize, hey, they're just kind of talking about them. Yeah, she is awful. She's awful. Nobody's hanging out with her, right? And that's what's happening now. The consumer's in charge. I'll tell you where it was most dramatic for us. We lost the use of RBST. That was used for dairy production and for dairy producers. It helped for milk production. This was in use for a long time. Milk was always tested before it leaves the facility. So it's not got antibiotics or all these other things in it. But a narrative went out there, and in the Eastern Corridor, we were told McDonald's absolutely wouldn't take anything if it came from a cow that had BST. And so we had to switch our whole platform, and all of our members had to switch their production practices to not leverage something they had leveraged for 20 years. It made them less profitable. So my concern, in addition to saying, hey, the consumers are there, and there's a value to that, I can tell you companies are investing in communications departments and things like that because we have to position the company appropriately. But the concern that you would have is how fact-based is that, and does it make our food supply more challenged? One of the foundations for the security of the United States is a safe, affordable food supply, driven by the most productive farmers in the world, the American farmer. But it pulls right back to the farmer, and the farmer isn't able to be profitable because they can't use safe, proven technology. I use this as an example, and I'm certainly realizing not all of you are in agriculture. But this is a narrative that you should understand in business, period. This is very concerning because it is a foundational pillar for the United States, and it's something that we have to address. We have to have more voices on behalf of agriculture and what is safe, affordable technology in use in agriculture. One of the other things that we're doing is focusing, and Rick mentioned this, focusing on another layer of disruption, the rural-urban divide. So, one of the things that's happening right now is that, it's this kind of thing, boy, if you were smart, you'd get you're from a rural community, the smart ones are going to the city. Did you ever hear that? It's almost a demonization. There are a couple things that are concerning to me, not just because our members live in these communities, but because I'm from Iowa and I'm in these communities all the time across the country. And, the couple things that are stunning to me. First of all, broadband access is not widely available in these towns. Now, how many of you, when you're back home, have a problem with broadband access? Yeah. So if you're there and you're going to school, many of folks are taking their kids to McDonald's or to the Dairy Queen or to the parking lot so they can finish their homework. Or they're wiring up some hotspot on a cell phone trying to get enough coverage. The concern, there's multiple concerns here. 100 rural hospitals closed down. There's a shortage of 40,000 doctors in rural communities. There's an opioid crisis. 3 of 4 farmers or farm workers have been directly impacted by the opioid crisis. 3 of 4. So there's no access to telemedicine, and farming is a dangerous business. So no access to telemedicine because there's no broadband access, and the rural community hospitals have closed down. You can't take advantage of teleeducation because you don't have broadband access. It's foundational. It's foundational for rural reinvestment for a vibrant rural economy. And no entrepreneurs are going to start jobs there because they don't have broadband access. It's unaffordable. Do you know of 78% of the counties that index as food insecure in America are in rural America? When I'm out talking about these challenges, shortage of doctors, shortage of availability to education, technology gaps, vibrant community gaps. I mean, it's a serious conversation. You know what I'm gratified for? And I try to remind everybody, we have a shared destiny between the rural areas and the urban areas. 19% of the population are in rural America, and they comprise 44% of the military. It tells me everything I need to know about the willingness for folks in rural America to do the hard work. And so this lack of investment in rural communities in rural America is simply unacceptable. What is right now inefficient, as I mentioned to policymakers, to regulators all the time, will be catastrophic. That is how quickly it is moving. Technology, think of the things that you know now that you didn't know 5 years ago. Think of the power of the phone that we all use. Now, of course, back in my day, and I'm sure back in your day, Rick, you couldn't even use a calculator in class, right? Had to do long division. But think of how quickly this has moved. Think of how quickly. These areas of concern, and this is one of the things that I was speaking with David and other members here of the staff at Iowa State, is we need public-private combinations, partnerships, policies. Because as I said, when I was in the East Coast, we're not resettling the land. We're not getting back on the wagon and going out to Montana, okay? We have got to worry about how these towns are rolling up, how there's no grocery store, there's no fresh food delivery, there's maternity deserts in these communities. These are significant policy issues. Yes, we are a food production and agribusiness. We work in rural America. These areas are centrally important, and I'm so grateful to be here with you today, many of you who live in rural communities, and even if you don't, you should be concerned. I'm grateful that when I speak to these issues in urban areas or with policymakers, people will say, I just didn't know. How can I help? I think awareness is the first thing. You've got to have awareness. And then it's getting, it's getting the willing, a convening of the willing to really drive. And I spend a lot of time in DC. Rick spends a lot of time in DC. Our staff, we have a government affairs group. And while we're talking about policy issues that are central to addressing, yes, rural and farming issues, but really these gaps that are critical for the United States security, but also critical for farmers and their communities. What is interesting to me is when I'm there, people don't want to move out of their town. They just want opportunity in their town. When people say, well, Beth, what do you think everybody wants? I say, well, everybody wants the same thing all of us want. A vibrant community, healthcare, education, opportunity for their families. This is not a mystery to me. And we need to remind ourselves of that instead of making it a political thing. Oh, it's a red state, blue state thing. It is not. The realities I mentioned of living in rural America, these are a few of the examples, and they are consistent with what I was just saying. A lack of investment, and it cascades into communities in America, in rural America. So how do we start to resolve this? Where do we begin? Because it's all of them. What is it? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Foundationally, I can't concentrate on everything. I can't concentrate on healthcare, though we have some healthcare initiatives. I can't concentrate on just on education. But what do you think is the number one thing that we have to get resolved? What would your guess be? To me, it's technology. To me, it's broadband access. You know why? It's like rural electric in the 1930s. You know, when they had the whole thing where you're going out and they're going to lay a line, you're going to get a light bulb and you're going to get electric. It's very similar. Every office I go into in DC, I said we need a rural electric 1930s initiative because it's a $60 billion problem. And while each governor I might speak to or each senator says, well, we're going to try to allocate, you know, this administration allocated $1 billion. And you say, well, that's a lot of money. It is. It's a $60 billion problem. And a state-by-state fix isn't going to get it done. Here, I think the legislature allocated $5 million. $5 million, I know the governor asked for more. Think of how long it will take to resolve this issue, because there's not one answer. But think of all the other carryover issues and how quickly disruption is occurring. This has to be resolved. It has to be resolved quickly with a federal program very similar to the 1930s in rural electric. And I think we begin by making an investment in technology. We begin also with reminding ourselves that we have to work together to feed a growing world population and advocate to strengthen our rural communities. I hope when you leave here, if this has resonated at all, that you advocate. We talk with our farmers all the time. One of the things we did at the last annual meeting is we had consumers come in and talk about how they make their food decisions. And I was saying to them before they came in, it was just a panel literally off the street. I said, you're gonna hate what they say. But you can't say anything. And so they got into it, and then they came back, they had the panel, and it was shocking. They came back and said, oh my gosh, we have so much work to do. They're so misinformed. They're so misinformed. I said, you know what? The problem is the way that you can guarantee or help to guarantee success about these issues is you have to get on the playing field. You have to shape your own playing field. Because if you do not, others will determine what sustainable food production looks like. Others will. You will be reactive. It's going to happen. I can tell you how many meetings I've been to where everybody's standing up their own platform or they have their own policies. You cannot get success if you are reactive the whole time. So what we have to do is remind ourselves we have to work together. And we need advocates like you. We need advocates like you putting voice to these things. When we left that meeting with our members, we trained them on social media. We said, you have to get into the conversation, even though it's uncomfortable. Agriculture or others talking to each other, talking to ourselves, is going to get us nowhere. Nowhere. Where we sit there and say, they don't know what they're talking about. That's not helpful. We need people like you. I need your help. We need your help. You have to advocate on your own behalf. If you are in a rural community or if you see these things and you're in, you have to remind yourself this is unacceptable. This is not right, I wouldn't even say just morally. From a competitive perspective, this can't be the way we're investing only in urban areas. As I was saying in Washington, you know what? Rural America is the new inner city, and that is not an overstatement in many rural communities. I know everybody wants the library on the corner in the Bronx, and so do I. Lived in New York for 15 years, but guess what? We need investment in technology. We need to handle some of the basics in these rural communities, and we need to get busy solving this. We need people that are dedicated to doing the meaningful work. One of the things that I found about myself in my 33-year career journey is that I like doing work that to me is meaningful. I've been on the trading floor, I've been in the oil industry, I've been chemicals, and I love those things intellectually, but the work here, I feel like I was meant to be here with my experience because it is the most meaningful work of my career. It is the greatest privilege of my career and my time to work on behalf of these families who I find so resilient, so impressive, so willing to do the hard work. Nobody's giving you a medal when you're up at 3 a.m. and you're fixing the manure pump in a blizzard. And they do it. And we have to remind ourselves of that. And so what we need are people like you who are investing in themselves, and I'm so encouraged to see you here, investing in themselves and their education, to continue their education and invest in solving these problems together. Because 20,000 to 40,000 jobs go unfilled in the ag sector every year because people don't find the work tech forward or interesting enough or sexy enough. I think, as I say, it's the most meaningful work of my career. We need business to lend its voice. Thus, I'm on the business roundtable. We've got the CEOs of every major corporation in there, and I speak quite a bit about what is the need in rural communities, and I'm thrilled that there's an interest in this. We need big businesses to connect with consumers and with rural America. As a land-grant college, Iowa State is uniquely positioned. We're a huge partner here because we believe in the programs, the expertise, the research, and the students. We have hundreds of Iowa State grads. In addition to the chair of the board, the CEO, the head of research. We've got, I don't even know how many other positions. There are numerous positions filled by Cyclones. We'll hire multiple people out of this university every year, and we partner on research. And why do we do that? Because of the depth of the programs and because the things that we believe are important, this university believes are important as well. Now, I'm going to pivot here. I've got one or two other slides, and then I'm going to get off the stage unless you want to ask a question or two. I thought it would be helpful, and I talked a little bit about this when I was here last, about my leadership playbook and the things that I think are important for you to think about as you go through your career journey. First one is to find work you believe in, and I told you, though I've worked in multiple businesses in multiple industries, what I've found is if you find work you believe in, it makes it not seem, simplistic doesn't make it seem like it's work. But if you're not doing work you believe in, think of it, you're going to have a 40-year career. That's a long career to be in work you don't really like, with people that you're not really sure are, that you want to be working with. So find work you believe in. Develop a natural curiosity. What I look for when I'm hiring people, and it goes from the shop floor all the way up, I look for a natural curiosity, intellectual curiosity. Please be broad readers. Please be interesting people. Read broadly. Don't get confirmation bias, right? Don't just invest in, I'm going to read this one magazine every week and that's great and I've got all the information I need. Be intellectually curious. The reality is as you leave university, it's not going to be the last you're going to continue to learn. You learn from different sources, read from different sources, develop a natural curiosity. You're going to have continuous learning in your life. And that's the interesting thing about it. That's an interesting life. Invest in yourself. That means continue your education. Invest in yourself and your health, in your families. Invest in yourself, because I see this too frequently where somebody gets so attached to something and they forget about themselves, or they say, I've finished my education, I don't need to do anything else. Invest in yourself. It will be evidenced to an employer, it will be evidenced to others about how you're continuing to demonstrate intellectual curiosity. Move to another function to broaden your skills. There were times I took laterals, took demotions, I went to different businesses. When you're young and when you're early in your career, please get broad. It will provide you multiple opportunities. Don't just get functionally narrow. In fact, if you're offered a job and they say, do you want to be at headquarters and it's kind of a nice job and you get to wear the nice clothes and it's kind of a 9-to-5 thing, or out in the field, please pick the field. It's where you will learn the most. It's where you will learn the most about yourself, about the customer, about the business. It will distinguish you. I always hire, even for every technical position, for the leaders of people. You can do that today here at the university. Demonstrate, and it could be simple, like I'll often ask, hey, did you work on a project with the team? Yeah. What role did you play? Not, hey, I had to be the leader, but in the answer, you can hear the evidence of someone who was viewed by their peers. Well, there was another guy who was leader, but I was helping, and then this guy didn't get something done because there's always a John or a Joe. I'm sorry if your name is John or Joe. Who everybody's like, I got John or Joe on my team. He never gets his stuff done. Huh? Right? Don't be John or Joe. Because that happens, right? Do we all know this? You don't want to get put on a project with people who don't get their work done. It might seem simple, but I guarantee you that is the same way it is in business. They want to know they can rely on you. And so you have to make sure that you're broadening your skills and that you are making sure that you're relevant to others. Make yourself well known in your industry. I say this because if you make yourself well known in your company, you're kind of playing small ball, aren't you? Everybody in my company knows me. Okay. But make yourself impactful in your industry or more broadly here on campus. Ask for what you want. I learned this from my mother, who has 8 of us, right? I'm number 5 of 8, and I was throwing some tantrum. I was 13. I don't know why I was throwing a tantrum, but you're 13. And she was just looking at me, and I'm looking at her, and I'm much taller than she is. And she said, if you want something, you ask for it. I'm not a mind reader. I thought, well, that's probably smart advice. And I've followed that advice in my career. If you just expect if you're going to do the hard work and everybody's going to recognize you and isn't that great, and you don't say what you want, you're not going to get what you want. I promise. And I'm not saying go out there and brag and say, I got to have this. But you must make your intentions known in any business. And there's nothing wrong with saying it. Now, be ready for the answer. Because sometimes you say, I want this job. And they say, we don't see you in that role. And you need to remind yourself that's a gift. It's a gift, and you have to put yourself in the best mindset for that. Because sometimes it's a gift because you get to say, well, what do I need to do to position myself then? What do I need to do to get myself into that role for you to think of me differently? And if they don't ever see you that way, then you know something. And then you can make a definitive decision to leave or to go someplace else where they may see you that way. So ask for what you want. I really encourage you in any business. And if they don't welcome that conversation from you, you're probably not in the right place. They're not going to care about your career. By the way, nobody cares more about your career than you do. That's the truth. Empower your team. Nobody wants me looking over their shoulder. I promise. They get to make the decisions. Nothing worse than having somebody come in and say, you got to do it this way, that way. And it's tough. It's tough because sometimes you're like, I don't really think that's a good idea. But you got to let somebody else take their ground, empowering your team. Be a sponsor and not just a mentor. When I mean that, today you can be a sponsor. So sometimes when I use that word, people say, well, I'm not in your role. It really has little to do with that. I've received calls throughout my career, are you interested in this job, or do you know anybody? And you say, it's not right for me, but Sally, boy, I worked with Sally, she's great. I worked with Jeff, he's terrific. That's the way you sponsor somebody else. It is not a zero-sum game. People get set up as competition. He got the job, so I don't get the job. I said, there's only one job. That is not helpful. It is not healthy. Everybody gets to rise up and have success if you're facilitating others' success. I promise you it's not about you. And people will want to work with you if you authentically are sponsoring their career too. I have worked with people for 40 years, or 35 years now, 33 to 35 years, multiple times. Multiple times. And they know that I'm as interested in their success. It's not about my success, it's about their success. And so be a sponsor, not just a mentor. It's great to be a mentor, but help others' careers. That's the way that you build a network, and networks are centrally important to career success. Make no mistake about it. Embrace discomfort, encourage your team to do the same. There are so many things that are unknown right now, so many things that are moving so rapidly. You will not have perfect information. You have to trust your intelligence, your gut. You didn't, as my mom said, you didn't get stupid overnight. There's going to be a lot of failure. It's fine. Patient's not going to die on the table. You move forward. You learn and you move forward. But be comfortable being uncomfortable. Businesses will change rapidly. Structures will change rapidly. You might change. It's okay. Foundationally, listen to yourself and remember, who you are. Remember who you are right now. You got into this university. It's not easy to get into this university. You've developed a competence. Oftentimes you get into business and you forget. And this last point is what I would say. You work with optimism and confidence. Now that seems like a trite thing. Oh, she's saying I work with confidence. You would be shocked how many times you get into the career and you lose your confidence. And you know why? You have your failure. And then you feel like everybody's looking at you like you're 13 and you have a pimple on your face before you go into the prom. It's true. And so I see this all the time. I had a failure, I took myself out of play. There's been research done especially for women where you go into corporate America and they ask you, how many of you want to make it to the C-suite? And they'll say 40%, and the same thing for men. And 2 years later you go back and the women it's dropped to 15%, and the men it stayed up at 35 or 40%, and they say to the women, what happened? And they say, I lost my confidence. I didn't see anybody, a role model. I didn't know how it was possible. I had a failure. And so then they take themselves out of play. I can guarantee you you're not going to have success if you take yourself out of play. Remember who you are right now. You will have failure. It's okay. I had multiple failures. I'd tell you all of them except for the meeting isn't that long and you want to get on to your next class. But I promise you that is part of the journey of life. It's one of the most important things to learn. Resilience, continuing on with your confidence, that is the difference maker to a successful career. For us, one of the things that I say, farmer to fork, we're farmer-owned, Land O'Lakes, built on a culture of innovation, upper Midwest dairy farmers trying to get power in the channel and get their sweet cream butter into the population centers in East. I think of the farmer as the ultimate entrepreneur, the original environmentalist. The whole culture of Land O'Lakes is built on innovation and being an entrepreneur. And that's why I find it special. That's why I'm excited to have found the place that I found at Land O'Lakes. I'm wishing you much success in your career. I'd be happy to answer questions. Thank you so much. Does anybody have a question? Who's going to stand up and ask a question? David's telling me I only get one question. Whew, this is a special question. No pressure. Right over here and over here. Okay, who had it up first? We'll go here. We're going to do two questions. First I'm going to go there and then you. Okay. You can stand.
I was just wondering what you think the power of the cooperative model has on rural community development and how that will help resolve some of the issues you alluded to.
I think it's central. I appreciate that conversation. That's why I said the cooperative model by definition means you're reinvesting in your community, right? The co-op's probably sponsoring the softball team and the library and everything else. I don't think Nutrient or Walmart is going to, and I like Walmart quite a bit, but I don't think they're going to sponsor the softball team, right? And so by definition, the co-op structure, there's an intimacy to the model that is about reinvestment in the community. The patronage or the dividend goes back into the pockets of the farmer. The farmer then invests in their community. So the cooperative structure, I think, is really critical for reinvestment. Though, as I've said, since farmers have not been making money for a long time, it's resulted in stress in these rural communities because there's no ability to go to the diner or the hardware store or wherever. And thus, it's got to be multiple things. I believe the co-op structure. I love the co-op model. There's an intimacy to it. I know the families. I know the communities. To me, that's a special privilege. It puts even more pressure on delivering appropriately, but I think your insight is correct that co-ops are more likely to work to resolve the issues we were discussing in rural communities. Thank you.
You mentioned earlier that a lot of businesses are transferring over to subscription models, and that you believe it's for the good of the customer. But doesn't that also open up the possibility that customers could lose their subscription?
Well, it depends on what the subscription is, right? So we oftentimes will say this is the services, and I'm sure you do it yourself, where you sign up for a model with Verizon or some Comcast or something, and you have some issue, or you sign up with a subscription for some delivery that you get every week, and so you have a subscription model. It depends on what the model is. And so the question ends up being, what is the pricing mechanism? What is the service mechanism tied to what the offer is? And whether somebody says that they they want to go ahead and invest in the actual asset themselves. A perfect example is in technology. Used to be you buy an ERP system, you'd invest in the servers in your own facility, and then you put that up. But now getting upgrades is really challenging, right? And you just made a $50 million investment. Now you got to come and get the upgrade. Now you're going to have another $10 million investment, $20 million investment. Instead, they're going to software as a service. So another services model, a subscription model, where instead you buy it, you stand up a standard platform, and then you take an upgrade the same way you do with your phone, right? You're in a broadband area, and suddenly they say, here, we've got an upgrade for you. Could you lose it? Well, it depends on what the model is that you've bought. I don't know that it will disintermediate. I think there are so many industries moving to the model that the bigger risk is if you're a company yourself, a Comcast or Verizon, somebody else is going to come in and market against you. They're going to price against you with their subscription model. And so I think it's an advantage. It's certainly from an entrepreneur's perspective an advantage because you can move with more speed to stand up different platforms instead of having to invest in a lot of these pieces of technology yourself. Right?
Thank you, Beth.
You bet. Thank you. Good luck.